Oklahoma State is making some major roster adjustments to the transfer portal. Is Oklahoma State going to be the surprise team in the Big 12?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily transfer portal, NIL, and recruiting news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Is Oklahoma State going to be the surprise in the Big 12 this year? They laid an egg in 2024, but they have a lot of players back that probably you don't know about, but did pretty well in spring. They have several transfer portal additions we're going to talk about right here on the Portal Podcast. And we're also going to get into details of the positions, the roster cuts, what they still need in the portal. To help me accommodate all of that, Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State. How you doing, sir? How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. And you know what? It's kind of ironic that you and I, well, we had several conversations over the years, right, talking about recruiting 7-on-7 and so forth. But when it came to the portal, Oklahoma State hasn't really done much in the last couple of years until now to have meaningful conversations. So I'm very happy to have this platform with you. But let's face the facts, it's only because we're absolutely killing it in the transfer portal. And so the answer to your question is, I think yes. Could Oklahoma State go from the worst to the first, just like Arizona State? With the acquisitions that we have, I definitely feel like the belief system is starting to engulf everybody in some orange Kool-Aid, brother.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the nature of the league in general. It's not always like dead last to first, but there'll be a team that finished ninth, and then they're in the Big 12 title game the next year. And it's like, where did that come from?
Especially in the bipolar Big 12, buddy.
Yeah, that's very, very true. All right, let's dig into this. My favorite commitment for them, because of position need, the body size, the body type,
right,
is Demarion Thomas from Vanderbilt. Now, he's played a couple of years of college football. First year, didn't play much, played 10 games, but only played 100 snaps. But this past year, he was the guy in the middle for Vanderbilt's defense. They run a bit of a hybrid D like a lot of teams do, but he can be your pure nose guard. Yes. Cody, what do you think the calorie intake is for a man that weighs 335 per day? What do you think?
Well, I have no idea, all right? I'm not even going to try to guess. But I will say, so some of the people that were on campus during his last visit to Oklahoma State, the common consensus was he is way bigger than 6'3", 330. And whenever you take into consideration, Oklahoma State has, and I think this is almost undeniable, the best strength and conditioning coach in the country. He's the only strength coach in America making $1.1 million because he's worth every single penny. I'll give you a perfect example. Malik Charles just recently came in at 252 pounds. He's at 284 pounds now in just 3 months' time. That is something that Oklahoma State can do, which is why we've made a killing in the last 22 years with 2-star and 3-star gyms that get developmentally better. And that's all because of Rob Glass. So what nobody seems to talk about enough is what strength and conditioning can provide. So you give us a guy that's 6'3", 330 pounds. It's really hard to fathom what he could potentially be. And another massive thing, we mentioned previously, you and I, in discussions about locking down the state of Oklahoma being imperative if you want to continue to build. Well, we also got Taje McCoy that started 13 games last year at Colorado. He's an Okie. So is Mr. Vanderbilt. So we've got two guys that are actually returning home to the state of Oklahoma. To me, this is even more solidification of locking down the state because OU's having some turmoil to some degree. Obviously, they were able to get David Stone to come back into the university. But at the same time, when you look at the state of Oklahoma and high school recruiting, we're doing better than OU on a pretty big basis. And now the transfer portal, we've done a phenomenal job at bringing back guys from Oklahoma that we let get away from the state. I think that's absolutely massive. You mentioned it. You have to have some defensive linemen that are capable of NFL stuff in order for you to make a legitimate run. And that has been the biggest deficiency, not only at Oklahoma State, but the Big 12 in general. I think if you go back to the 2021 defense of Oklahoma State, was number 3 in the country overall at the end of the season, the best defense we've ever had. It had some guys like Tyler Lacey that is still playing with the Jacksonville Jaguars that were capable, and that is one of the biggest reasons we had so much success. So we have to bring that back. And I feel like we're not only doing that, but we're accentuating the state of Oklahoma being important to Mike Gundy in this 2025-2026 area.
I agree. They keep let's just say, Cody, 2 more kids home a year in recruiting and bring back 2 more kids a year from the transfer portal, and you can pick the positions.
Right.
It still gives you more depth. If you look at the top of each league, depth is usually a major part of it. You're going to take some attrition on the injury front, no matter how you practice, no matter what your precautionary is. Football is brutal. So I think that's a really important point, not just for state, for any Big 12 team that's trying to climb up, because depth killed some teams last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and for Oklahoma State specifically, last year everything was predicated upon the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So all of the defensive linemen, their only job was to eat up areas of operation, eat up double teams to allow the guys in the back end to have huge seasons. That's one of the reasons that Nick Martin had 140 tackles and led the country a couple of years ago, was because of that KISS methodology. Well, the downside of that is if you're a defensive lineman and you're not involved in the play at all and you're not getting in the backfield because it's not designed for you to do so, it's really hard to sell that, in my opinion, to a potential recruit or a transfer. Like, come to Oklahoma State, be a defensive lineman. You're not going to get any stats, but you are going to help us win, and you're going to help the guys behind you get tons of stats. I don't know that that was a great selling point. This defense is considerably different. Todd Grantham is not operating that way, and I've heard from several players that the new D-line coach, Ryan Osborne, and the new defense coordinator, Todd Grantham, they give zero hoots, poops. They don't care about the visual aspects of playing favoritism and all of that. They're here on a mission. They're being ruthless about it, and they're not taking anything that I don't know that we've had to deal with the last couple seasons.
I think that's important. Georgia's the only one that's had success with that, but they also have had a few guys that were so good athletically they could pass rush. They just didn't have to. That's a different animal. But
yeah,
you're
so
right.
we went from recruiting guys to man an area to now recruiting guys that need to get in on the stats department. We need our defensive linemen to get in the backfield and rush the quarterback, get sacks, running back hurries. We need to do all that because we haven't done it in a couple of years. And again, I think bringing in guys like this is proof that we understand the landscape has changed. We have to make an adjustment, and we are operating like an SEC NFL team now.
What do you think Thomas is going to do? Is he going to play? Are they going to play him at shade nose, or are they going to play him straight up, or what technique we're talking here?
I think both, because so the 3-4 defense is what Todd Grantham's been able to kind of make his bread and butter. But at the same time, we're going to have that fourth linebacker that is also going to put his hand in the dirt. So that's going to cause a little bit of a shift on the defensive line. We're going to have times where we have a 3-man defensive front, but there's going to be a decent amount of times where we creep up a fourth guy and he'll put his hand in the dirt. But I do think straight up nose tackle is the most advantageous position for him. But if you do have to creep in another defensive end into the fold, the combination of him and Justin Kirkland should be massive, because Justin Kirkland's another individual, 6'4", 316 pounds, I believe. But he's the dude that can squat almost 700 and bench over 500. We just need to see the technical side of it translate on the field, and having somebody like Thomas come in that has some training, that has been in some SEC style of playing systems, should be able to help Justin Kirkland even more so with that developmental aspect.
Yeah, you got to put guys next to guys, because if you just have one good D line, they just double team.
And that's precisely what happened last year. Justin Kirkland was unfortunately irrelevant, because the other defenses knew, well, if you stop the guy that can bench 500 pounds, you're probably going to be fine. And unfortunately, they were right.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. Let's talk about Taje McCoy for a second.
Yeah.
Edge from Colorado. PFF has him last year, the 161 reps, and he defensive grade 63.8, et cetera, et cetera. Like he wasn't like great on his grades, but he's still a fairly young guy.
Right.
And they just, again, There just aren't enough defensive linemen in general. Edge is a little easier than defensive tackle, but it's still important.
Well,
How
and I
deep
think
is how
you
deep
got to.
is State at
This
the
is,
end?
I think, this is perfect segue into that conversation of sometimes we're going to creep up a different guy to be that fourth defensive end. I think Taje McCoy is going to fit in that fold because what is he, like 6'3", 250?
Yes.
So he does fit into that mold of being a defensive lineman, but he also has the capability to get to the flats and play the seams. I think it's very exciting. And let's call a spade a spade. Getting a guy from Colorado after what Colorado did last year is a big deal. Getting a guy from Colorado a few years ago wasn't much to speak about, but getting a guy that played that many snaps and was that productive, does he have misses? Yes. Does he miss assignments occasionally? Yes. Does he whiff on the quarterback at times? Absolutely. But you just mentioned he's got the intangibles. He's just a young dude that hasn't really learned the technical side of the game. Now that he's had 2 years at Colorado, plus all of the coaching that we've brought in, I think you could see him emerge as one of the top guys in the Big 12.
Yeah, that's the key. You've talked about development a lot with the Cowboys. That is everything. And portal guys are still the same. They've got a little college, but the majority of them that leave, they weren't the guy. There's some exceptions. Like Demarion Thomas started last year.
Right.
That's why I brought him up first. Like, he might be your best defensive player next year, even if his stats don't say so, because you got to double it.
Yep.
If you don't, your quarterback gets hit by 350 or whatever he really is.
Right.
That's bad news bears. So you have to figure
and you
that
can't
out.
double team everybody, right? So if you double team Thomas, that means you cannot double team either Justin Kirkland or Mono. Mono's had several sacks in the spring game. I know spring game, it's two-hand touch on the quarterback, so it's really hard to quantify if those sacks are legitimate or not. But getting into the backfield seemed to be pretty easy for a couple of our guys. So if you double team one, you open the door for another. And I think that is what is giving us some excitement coming into this season.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what Oklahoma State still needs if they're going to make a run at the Big 12 this next year. That is next on the Portal Podcast. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps the game exciting. Build your lineup however you want. This week, I'm picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run and Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. That's all I had to do. It's that easy. Plus, there are a lot of different promos like Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on your select player projections or even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Cody, where do they need to hit still? Is there any position you're like, I'm not so sure about this? Where's Oklahoma State at?
I still think we're going to need some help on the offensive line primarily because the last few years we've been recruiting for that old school running style of Ollie Gordon, right? So we went from a zone blocking scheme, spread system to a more old school. And that's the way we've recruited. I think it's put in a little bit of a predicament this season. I believe that the offense wants to get more explosive, more creative, take more deep shots, have some turbo packages. And it's really hard to do that with the current offensive linemen that are, I think, more or less built for run blocking. So we need help in the pass protection department, in my personal opinion. And if you looked at the spring game, it is hard to make a distinguishment because you have first team and fourth team. They're all kind of merged together, right? Especially on the offensive line. So you don't know exactly what you have. But what you do see is that whenever you do the mixing matching of offensive linemen, they're not great at keeping the D-line from getting in the backfield. So I think for us to have the offense that Doug Meacham wants to have, we have to get better in the pass protection department from the offensive line.
Is there any one particular position? Is it right guard, left tackle, or is it just generically speaking?
I think both tackles are going to be paramount to the success of this season because let's face it, Garrett Rangel, Haas Haney, and Zane Flores, they are all primarily mobile quarterbacks, right? And you have to have tackles that understand the differences in leverage whenever you have a mobile quarterback as opposed to somebody that's going to stand in the pocket. So I think we need more tackles that have the ability to not only understand, because one of the difficulties last season was we had the penalty for having linemen downfield too far way too often. So that's a little bit of discipline, but it's also a little bit of confusion on what the quarterback's going to be doing. We have to be able to rely on our quarterbacks being mobile and getting outside of the pocket occasionally. And I don't think we currently have the offensive tackles that can help orchestrate all of that. Now, getting in Markel Samuel is going to be somebody that's absolutely huge. He should be able to plug in pretty instantly. And then we've got a redshirt freshman, Jack Dean, that seems to be doing pretty well. He's very athletic, very nimble. And we've got a guy like Noah McKinney that could potentially slide out. But we've been a run-first offense for the last 3 years, and we're trying to shift, I think, to a little bit more of a pass-heavy offense. And we just need the tackles to have not only the understanding, but the physical ability to scoot out to keep protecting the QB when he does roll.
Any other position that you think Oklahoma State is one injury away from a serious problem? Quarterback.
I haven't seen or heard a whole lot about the safety position this season. So I don't know if that's because we have some problems and we're trying to kind of hide it. But I feel like in order for us to have the season that you're talking about, right, competing for Big 12 title, getting back to the CFP, we're kind of thin at some of the defensive back positions. So I wouldn't be incredibly surprised if we went and got out a couple more transfer portal additions. So safety seems to be the one position that nobody's really talking about, and I can't really figure out why. So that either means we got a secret sauce that we don't want to share with people, or we don't have what we need there quite yet.
Well, safety is a lot harder than it used to be because teams run so many different packages out of like even 12 personnel now. They can be in 5 wide with 2 tight ends in the game. So if you don't know what you're doing as a tight end, that's one thing. But if you don't know what you're doing as a safety, you just mess up your one route. The safety screws up where everybody's supposed to go, and that's touchdown. So that's a problem. Yeah, I know there are a lot of teams worried about the deep secondary. Oklahoma State would not be the first. What's going on with the portal in general? Do you think is it where you thought it would be for Oklahoma State, or is it ahead?
Way ahead, bro. Way ahead. I mean, let's face the facts. The name of the university that you come from is somewhat irrelevant, but not always. Oklahoma State used to get a bunch of D2 guys. There's nothing wrong with that. Somebody like Leon Johnson III proved that D2, D3 guys can play at this level. But typically, when you get those individuals, you know that you're getting them with the understanding it's going to take them 2 years to really be able to produce on the field. That is what's different in this portal class. We're not going after guys that we know need a little bit of development. We're strictly going after dudes that we plan on playing right away. Again, getting J.K. Johnson from LSU means he should be able to plug and play. Jalen Davies, UCLA, should be able to plug and play. We just mentioned some of the defensive linemen and offensive linemen that are all designed to come in and play immediately. There's nobody that we're getting in the transfer portal that is designed to sit on the bench and developmentally grow over the next couple of years. I think that is the biggest difference between Oklahoma State now and then, and the NIL. The NIL that we're spending is something that I never, ever, ever, ever thought that we would. I mean, getting close to $1 million for Ollie Gordon, I thought maybe it was going to be the peak of Oklahoma State NIL, but we're doing some crazy things, partially because of the concert, partially because of the new staff and the excitement. You got to think about it from a donor's perspective. When you're seeing a bunch of 4-star, 5-star transfers and recruits on campus, and then they talk about how amazing it is in Stillwater, it makes you want to give more money, and that is precisely what's happening right now.
Well, I think it's a great story because when you have teams rise up out of the blue, that's what's made college football famous in the first place. So I'm all for it. That's the good news. Now I got to get into something that is the awkward side of football.
Yeah.
Everybody, this isn't Oklahoma State. This is 100% across the FBS. The new rule, for those who don't know, is you're at 105 scholarships, but that includes your walk-ons, if you want to call them that.
Correct.
So if you were at 115 players with walk-on or whatever it was, somebody's gone. And that was before you added your scholarships from the portal, before you added all your recruits and all that. Like it's a conundrum. There are teams that are 10-plus players over their number after spring.
Yeah.
Is Oklahoma State, do they have a specific plan, or are they going to kind of let it play out? And when guys get in trouble or if they just want to leave, that obviously helps you. But anything else going on there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we talked about it a little bit off air. I mean, there are some things outside of football that will cause some players to get cut. Like, I haven't confirmed fully yet, but I've heard something in regards to a pretty big name linebacker that did play a little bit last year. He's gonna be a cut. And the thing of this is, getting to 105 means there's going to be some surprises. Right, Milwaukee Smith was an individual that the fan base was freaking out about because he did play last year. He did win a game last year. He almost won another game last year. So he proved that he could be a viable starting quarterback in this league. But he's gone, right? And it happens. Some of it is on field, but obviously there's going to be some off field things that are amplified. Right. So if you used to get away with some things here and there because of your athleticism or your talent or your ability, when you have to get to this 105 roster spot, that goes out the window. I've been told time and time again, this new staff, primarily on the defensive side of the ball, they're more about technique than talent. So they're going with guys that are going to be in the right positions, fill the right gaps, even if they're not 6'3", 255 pounds and run the 4.40. Some of those guys that I just mentioned that have that size, strength, and speed, they're out the door. Partially because of on-field stuff, but there could be some off-field stuff that does kind of creep into this equation as well. And that is the one thing that people aren't talking about, right? Some of these cuts all across the country, not specifically in Stillwater, there's going to be some names that really surprise fan bases out there. But I'm telling you, some of it is not just because of the X's and O's. All of the adjustments in college are very difficult, right? You have to battle through injuries and learn the difference between being hurt and being injured. You have to go to class. You have to learn the campus. You have to learn the coaches, now we're in a new system on both sides of the ball. There's a lot that you have to take in. And if you're doing all of that, plus you have extracurricular activities, the coaches know that you probably, if you're doing X, Y, and Z, and you're enjoying the town life a little bit too much, you're probably not doing what you're supposed to be doing to put yourself in a position to start. And this new staff, they do not care who you are, where you came from, how many years you've been here, if you started last year or not. If you do not fit the mold, they do not want to deal with any of the ramifications, because the last thing you want to have is a very talented individual that gets suspended halfway through the season. So not only are you getting rid of guys that aren't going to make it, but you're also getting rid of some guys that might be slightly problematic.
I think that's a big problem in college football, but the 105 is going to help that be taken care of, if you will. So
it is.
There's no nice, it's not a friendly conversation, but sometimes you make your own choices in life, and then the coach makes his choices. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Oklahoma State's offseason, what needs to happen to kind of finish up for the Cowboys to make a chance to get to the Big 12 title game. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge in the playoffs. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute ticket deals can save you up to 60% off. Last-minute deals. This also means things other than basketball. You don't have to go to an NBA playoff game. You can go to a concert. You can go to a movie. You can go to a comedy show. Also, all of those are going to have opportunities for big discounts with Game Time. The all-in pricing app is also something that you got to check out, because I hate getting the wrong price, because I see something on my ticket when I go up to the register and it's not that. You get all-in pricing with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Off-season, Cody. Anything else besides the portal that you're looking at? Is there a position? Is there a player? Like, you got young guys coming up. I mean, we're talking mostly transfer portal right now, because the portal doesn't end until Friday. But is there anything else that you want to add? Like, this is what Oklahoma State needs to do, or this player, this position. What do you got?
Who's going to be quarterback one, right? I mean, that's going to be the most popular conversation all across the country, but not everybody's having quarterback battles like Oklahoma State. It's a legitimate quarterback battle. It appears to be a three-way race. Now, there's upsides to all of them. Garrett Rangale's been here for years. He understands how to call audibles and adjust the defenses. a little bit better. Haas Haney is faster and stronger than Spencer Sanders, so he has a lot of allure to him. And then Zane Flores is your prototypical 6'3", 220-pound quarterback that can run, that seemingly has a lot of people insanely excited. But we have to make a determination on who that's going to be. And from what I'm guessing, all right, I believe we're going to make that determination around mid-August on who is going to be quarterback one, because Mike Gundy does not want to have a three-way battle going into the season. He's been very open about that. He really wanted somebody to take the job in the spring, but that hasn't exactly happened. There hasn't been a degree of separation big enough yet to make that determination. That is going to happen mid-August. So is Zane Flores going to have the capability to read the defense and become a little bit more efficient? If so, he might be the guy. Can Garrett Rangel hold on to it, being that senior level veteran? It's a possibility. And then Haas Haney is going to have packages no matter what. Whenever you run a 10-6 100-meter dash and a sub 4.40, you're going to have packages. And another fun one is Sam Jackson the fifth. Sam Jackson V was a quarterback at TCU, transferred to Auburn, became a wide receiver, kind of got buried on the depth chart. Now he's a Cowboy. And I'm hearing, other than Io Shotomite King, who has a little bit of an injury, the biggest surprise has been Sam Jackson V. So much so that he's going to factor into the starting rotation at the slot receiver. He's also the return guy. And you ready for this one? I think he's going to have some throwing packages. So
if you use him on the goal line or in short yardage, I mean, he can run. I've seen him play. I mean, if you start running towards the line and then you throw a pop pass, I mean, the DB's got to make a decision. You coming downhill or not?
And I think I don't want to get it wrong, but I believe he threw for like 900, 1,000 yards at TCU. So it's not like it's a foreign concept for him, but his athleticism off the charts. He took a almost 90-yard return for a touchdown in the spring game. I think he is somebody that might give everybody a little bit more excitement. I actually was just texting Zach, and I was like, man, y'all let one get away here. Sam Jackson V is the real deal. He's like the Swiss Army knife that, from a defensive perspective, you have to pay attention, because you know he can run routes. You know he can throw the ball. You know he can be a return man. You know he's got elusivity. That's somebody that is difficult for a defense to pinpoint, because if you lose him at any point in time on the field, it's going to be a problem.
That's important. When Oklahoma State has been good under Gundy, they've had somebody in the receiver group that's an NFL player. I'm not saying Sam is. He's been banged up a lot. Yeah. But also just adding elusive players that are just really good in college and maybe just have a cup of coffee in the NFL. There's nothing wrong with that either. I don't think it's going to the first or second round or anything, but stranger things have happened too. By the way, who will be the best receiver for the Cowboys this year, in your opinion?
I believe it'll be Io Shotomite King, 6'4", 225-pound wide receiver. He's the bigger version of Leon Johnson III. So for Cowboy fans out there that saw what Leon did, I think Io Shotomite King is going to have a bigger season, and I think he's going to be the go-to guy. But Sam Jackson is definitely in that equation as well. Plus, whenever you bring in Cam Abshire and Christian Fitzpatrick, those dudes should be able to factor into this conversation by the end of fall also.
Yeah, they're a little bit more talented, I think, than people recognize. But again, they had a really bad season last year and just it fell off. So,
yep. And we did have way too many drops in the spring game. It was raining, right? So the weather has some factor. Okay. But you can't have that. If you're a team that is based on opening up the offense and taking some deep shots, if you do that and you have drop balls, then you're going to have a bunch of 3-and-outs, which is going to put your defense in a terrible position where they're playing so many snaps, it's hard for them to be successful. So it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation, of course. But I think that's partially why we have brought in a couple more 6'4", 200-plus pound wide receivers, is because we plan on utilizing that 50-50 ball. And you can't be a 50-50 ball team if you got guys dropping the daggone thing.
Oh, I absolutely agree. This year, Oklahoma State gets to be the hunter again.
Yes.
I think that will, I think that will help.
Every year, this is almost like clockwork. Death, taxes, and Mike Gundy underperforming in what is supposed to be a massive year. All of the years that we've made runs, it's been the teams that nobody expected to do anything. And I think that is another indication that this could be a big season. And I'll give you one more name before we skedaddle on off here to pay attention to. It's Ole Miss linebacker transfer, Trip White. Trip White legitimately is faster than Nick Martin. Now, speed doesn't equate to ability on the field all the time, but Nick Martin's going to be a draft pick. Nick Martin did lead the country in tackles for a reason. And Trip White, man, his ability to cut off angles is next level. And his ability to not get caught in the wash when the O-linemen get to the second level, that was the biggest difficulty, in my opinion, we had last year. We had guys like Kendall Daniels that have all of the NFL size, skill, speed, strength, all of that. But they would get eat up by offensive linemen over and over and over, which is why the running backs would get to the second level. Guys like Brian McCoy and Trip White should be able to kind of curb that. And that should be something that everybody's excited about to see this season, is the enhancements of the Oklahoma State linebacker room.
Cody, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Locked On Oklahoma State. And if you happen to be out on the 7-on-7 circuit, feel free to give me a holler. You can hit me up on Twitter at AllDayOState. And I do a little bit of writing occasionally. So feel free to reach out, and I'll be able to point you in a direction. It might not be the right direction, but it'll be a direction nonetheless.
You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Odyssey, and everywhere else you get your pods. Please like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. We will see you soon. Take care.